Hi everyone, welcome to the Car Chat podcast. I'm Sam Moores, and with me today I have Chris Ingram. Hello.
Hi Sam, how are you doing?
Very good, very good. Welcome to the podcast. Can you tell the audience a little bit about sort of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name's Chris Ingram. 3 years ago, I became the first British driver in 52 years to become FIA European champion in rallying. And
Nice.
now I'm competing in the World Rally Championship in WRC2, chasing my dream to be world champion.
Yeah, I mean that looks mental. How did you get into this? How did this all start off?
So my dad
Yeah, talk to me.
my dad used to compete when he was my age.
Hmm.
He competed on road rallies, which were really popular back then at night time. And he was a very talented, quick driver, won lots of events and championships, but he never really took it seriously enough and pursued it as a career. Luckily, he went into business and he did really well for himself and managed to get back into rallying when I was a young kid.
Oh, nice.
He bought an ex-McRae Focus WRC,
Oh, sweet.
an ex-Solberg Subaru S11 WRC, and he was really quick. He won the national championship, the National Open Championship, which is what it basically was in 2008.
Yeah.
When I was about 12, and yeah, he took me to watch a rally when I was about 8, and I just fell in love with the sport. Then from following him compete, I just, it was just obsession. I was just the biggest rally fan ever, and I wouldn't miss any rally. Either I was
Yeah.
watching my dad or we were going to watch other rallies, and every weekend I was out with my video camera filming,
Oh,
and I
nice.
just was just in love with the sport and always dreamed one day to get the chance to drive, which I was very lucky that my dad gave me the chance when I was 15,
Okay.
in a Citroen C1 in the Junior Rally Championship. But at the same time, it was the recession, and unfortunately, my dad went through a really tough time. As a family, we lost everything really, and
Mm,
had to sell our house, and obviously, he had to
sure.
sell his rally cars, and yeah, it was a tough time. But luckily, he got me into the sport, and he gave me the passion, and I've just chased my
Yeah.
dream ever since.
How do you even start out? You're like, okay, here's a car. You're 15, so like you've not been driving on the road or not meant to have been driving on the road. How does that work? You obviously don't just get in a car, there's a rally stage, you've never used a clutch before, off you go.
Yeah, yeah. So that was literally what happened as well. My dad, because I was used to driving quad bikes and buggies
Okay.
and karts for fun. I didn't even know what the clutch did when I first got in a car.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a junior championship for kids aged 14 to 17, and there's rallies on private land like airfields. Even some race circuits have
Yeah.
small single venue rallies, they're called. So that was how the junior championship began, on venues such as those. And yeah, I was it's just so lucky that my dad gave me the chance to start off at that those grassroots level in the sport.
Yeah. Yeah. Picking up the skills. A C1. I feel like a C1 is probably quite an interesting car to rally. It's not exactly got the longest wheelbase or anything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they were all bog standard 1 litres, but as a 15-year-old
Yeah.
kid, that was like my world rally car.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, great memories.
Were there lots of were you working on the car and then trying to set it up differently and whatnot
Yeah,
to get it to
yeah,
drive better?
exactly. Because my dad and I ran the car ourselves, and even though neither of us are mechanics, we learned a lot together, and
Yeah.
went to compete against 20 other dads and lads, and it was a really competitive championship. And yeah, we would make little modifications to the suspension or the airbox, and it was really good fun. It's amazing how, when I look back to then, how things have changed.
Yeah, yeah. And was your dad being a co-driver for you, or was it just a driver in the car for those things?
No, I had your family weren't allowed to co-drive for you because of
Okay.
safety. I had a mate.
Safety.
Yeah, I think that if there was an accident, they wouldn't want
Both of you, yeah.
both of you in the car. I had a mate co-driving for me, and my dad shouting at me because I'd scratched it or ripped a bumper off when we came
Yeah.
back into the service park after.
And then, so you did the C1, and then where did it go from there?
Yeah, so then I got my road driving license about
Right.
a week after I passed my test, after my 17th, a week after my 17th birthday.
Yeah.
And we got a Renault Twingo R2, which was actually quite a big step from the little 1 litre. That was a 1.6 R2 car, which at the same time, Elfyn Evans, who's current world WRC1 competitor, was competing in the same class.
Yeah.
And I basically just rolled that car into a ball multiple different occasions. And because it was such still a small car, but I think it had 220 horsepower.
Okay. Yeah.
And, a sequential gearbox. So it was a pretty nippy car,
Yeah.
but just so difficult to keep in a straight line because they're so small. So I learned a lot driving that, and it was actually a great school to start in such a difficult car to drive. And then I entered the Circuit of Ireland Rally, which was in the European Championship, and I had a huge crash whilst leading. And I was also 7th overall at the time amongst the four-wheel drive car.
Yeah.
But I destroyed the car, and I thought, that's it. We've completely ran out of money.
Yeah.
I was working in my mum's coffee shop at the time, and my dad was still helping me a little bit then, where he could. But I destroyed the car, and we'd run out of money, and I thought that was it. That was the end. I'm going to have to go and do something else.
Yeah.
But luckily, I'd shown so much potential on that one rally.
Rolling it.
Well, before the roll,
Yeah.
that Peugeot, the boss of Peugeot Sport at the time, had noticed me competing against his young factory drivers, and Peugeot Sport and Peugeot UK came together to support me, fully funded program for 2 years in the European Junior Championship, which was an amazing break at a critical time.
That sounds like quite a rare thing to happen. Is that quite rare to get fully funded by just a team?
Yeah, extremely rare in this day and age. I think I was the first driver since Burns to get a fully funded drive at that time, because it was before Elfyn Evans got his drive in WRC. And that was when I thought, right, this gets serious now. I was only 19, but working with a proper manufacturer and marketing people, it was a massive learning curve. Yeah.
So from that point beforehand, you were trying to find all the funds and put all that together, which presumably has still stuck with you throughout. It's like I imagine, sounds like most motorsport funding is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
The biggest headache. You've obviously got to be quick and all that. How did that change? Was that quite nice and give you a lot of space to go from, I'm not really sure how we're going to make this work, to, well, at least you've got 2 years.
Yeah, I think it was a blessing and a curse, because then after the 2 years with Peugeot, I managed to impress Opel, the German factory team. So I moved to Opel, who were leading. They had a better car at the time and a better opportunity, and that was fully funded again. Another rare opportunity with two German teammates just right, right place, right time again. I won the championship with those guys, but then I was back into no man's land where
Right.
I've
Yeah.
won all the junior championships, but there's no next step. And the next step was to win the European Championship overall, but there was no factory team supporting drivers at that time.
Right.
And Opel or Peugeot didn't have a car suitable, so there was nowhere
Yeah.
for me to really go. Luckily, I managed to raise a good amount of sponsorship and teamed up with a private team. And in the second year, I won the European Championship overall with them, with Talksport. But then
Nice.
it was a constant struggle to find the funding because there was no manufacturer support.
Yeah. 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 Like, what have you learned throughout the time about getting sponsorship? Have you found like there's a better way than others? Like, I imagine this has all changed significantly in the last like 10 years with social media and stuff like that.
I'm still trying to work that out. But yeah, that's always been my greatest challenge. Coming to the end of the year, this time of year, every year has been a fight of how can I keep going and how can I
Yeah.
take the next step.
Does that affect you during the season?
It did during the European Championship because I knew at that time I was actually getting into debt to just keep rallying. And any crash would have certainly been the end of my career.
Yeah.
So it was massive pressure, massive stress, and very difficult to deal with, as well as try and perform at your best.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen that a bit I've done a tiny bit of circuit racing, and I know if I'm against, I've had a situation where I'm paying for my car, and might be someone's son or something,
Yeah.
where they're getting paid for, so they're not. If they crash, they're not paying the bill. It gets paid, and there is you do notice a difference in how some people drive because they just don't care. Like eventually, I think, sure, it will come back around eventually, but there was a realm of drivers that were going, yeah, but I really don't want to pay that bill.
That's exactly where I am in WRC2. I've been first privateer all year, but some of the guys I've been, one-to-one with, some of my rivals, I'd say,
Yeah.
they can afford to just crash and it won't affect them at all.
Yeah,
They've destroyed
yeah.
so many cars in their careers, but for me, that's just not an option. But then again, there's a strength to that because I've learned how to
Not.
be very consistent, and I've learned how to keep the car on the road and a driving style which is fast and safe.
Yeah. How does that? What does that sort of look like? Because I don't really know. I've seen super flamboyant and then I guess less flamboyant, but it generally, I've only watched a tiny bit of rallying, and it looks quicker to be somewhere in the middle, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that sort of case?
Yeah, exactly. Colin McRae's driving style just wouldn't be. It would be too ragged for these modern cars.
Yeah.
Far too aggressive. So, yeah, there's definitely, you've got to be a lot more smooth. And some of these rallies are so tough. The roads are so rough that there's only so much the cars will take as well.
Yeah.
So a cleaner style is always the way. I mean, look at Loeb.
Yeah.
Smoothest, arguably the best driver ever.
And how have the different cars that you've driven and this driving style, if you had to adapt your sort of driving style to each car, and how has that changed since you've been driving different cars?
Obviously, two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive is a big difference, but I think if you can drive a front-wheel drive car well, four-wheel drive's easy.
Right.
My first rally in a four-wheel drive car, I was straight on the pace.
Yeah.
Some of these, the young drivers in the junior categories don't get the credit they deserve because the cars are much more difficult to drive, and they've really got to wring the neck of them.
What makes it harder driving two-wheel drive? Like, do you get some leeway with four, or
Yeah,
where do you suffer?
yeah. Whereas in a front wheel drive car, you've got to be so precise, and if you get out of line, it's very difficult to keep the car on the road. Whereas these four wheel drive cars are set up where, if you're out of line, you just boot the throttle and it'll pull you out of the corner 99% of the time.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Yeah.
just extracting that final 1% in speed at WRC level from technique and nailing every single corner in a whole 30-kilometer stage is an
Yeah.
art.
And is it possible to sort of learn the stages to some extent, or not?
The rallies are so long, but then again, the guys that have been there there's guys there that have been there for 10, 15 years, and I think they're learning the stages. For me, it's only my second year, so I've not managed to really learn them yet. But luckily, my pace notes are very good, and that's one of my strengths.
How do you go about making those? Like, what's the sort of process, and down to what level of detail do you kind of go?
It's just experience, and when I was younger in my junior years, I was putting way too much information in to try and make them very precise. But actually,
Okay.
you need to strip them out and make them simple and easy to listen to and easier to get into a flow state with,
Yeah.
but also keeping a level of precision. It's
Yeah.
there's a difficult balance, but I think that's one of my strengths, and that's why I'm able to go so well, even though I've only just reached WRC in
Yeah.
WRC two now. I'm a newcomer really, but I'm on the pace.
Yeah. What are some of the? Do you have sort of unique things that you put in your pace notes that your co-driver says that other people don't?
I think everyone has certain words and different ways to caution a corner or describe a corner, but mostly I'd say it's fairly similar language.
Yeah. And what's the? I'm trying to think what people sort of say. Like,
Hairpin
what
left,
might?
or
How do you sort of describe a corner, like a hairpin? Is it? I guess it's called a hairpin and all that sort of malarkey.
yeah. So I described the corners 1 to 10. So a
Right.
9 left is a 90-degree left. Anything more
Okay.
than a 10, a 100-degree left is a hairpin. So 1 is
Okay.
fastest. 1, 2, 3 is most of the time flat out. And then you've got your medium corners, 4, 5, 6. And it's slightly tighter, 7, 8, 9 to 90 degrees. And
Yeah.
then you have the length of the corner. Sometimes if it's a very long corner, we'll measure that whole distance. So it could be 5 left over 100 meters.
Okay.
And then you've obviously got crests, jumps, bumps, tightening corners, corners which open. Then also sometimes a pace for each corner, each angle. So
Okay.
it could be quite a tight corner with the angle. It could be a 90 degrees left, but it could be quite open. So it could be a fast 9 left if you can carry a
Right.
bit more speed. There's so much really you need to fit in, but like I said before, also keeping it simple because it can easily overwhelm you.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you had any big moments where something's been called and then you're like, oh shit?
Funnily enough, my last rally,
What happened?
Greece in September, I don't actually know because the audio wasn't working on the camera, but
Yeah.
I thought it was a fast left which tightened to
Yeah.
quite a tight left. But I didn't hear, or I got confused about the tightens, and I basically thought it was a max left. The tree line looks like you're going straight on, but that was
Yeah.
actually a massive drop. So I realised at the last moment and, handbraked it to try and make it round. But
Yeah.
I was carrying way too much speed and we rolled about 7 or 8 times down the ravine. So that was
What
the
is?
first time I've got confused in 8 years. I've never
Yeah.
lost control of a car and crashed. It's always been confusion on a pace note,
Yeah.
which is quite interesting.
What went through your brain when you're going like flat through that, and then suddenly you're like, "Uh oh."
Well, I had no idea the drop was going to be that big.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we're just going to roll once into a ditch. But, it just kept going and going and going. And I knew we were safe because the roll cages are so strong.
Yeah.
But it was just a bit frustrating. The first thing you think is we're out the rally and you don't think, oh, we're alive. You think, oh, how are we going to continue in the rally?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The adrenaline is you're just in the zone.
Do you have a bit of like when you come to a stop in a situation like that? I know that this happened to me. Is in between coming off at a corner and going, okay, I'm going to hit that wall. I'm going to hit that wall quite hard. And then you're like, I'm not going to die. And then you're like, this is going to be expensive. And then you hit the wall.
Usually it happens a lot quicker than that for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because rolling a car always feels like slow motion.
Right.
As soon as
okay,
it rolls, it's literally like the world slows down.
Wow.
But yeah, that's you just so in the zone that it's not scary. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
And then it's over.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I guess, so then presumably you feel really safe in the car.
Yeah, very. Like, it's like a PlayStation. Which, it is mad, really, because the speeds we're going and the trees, and trees don't move. But you just don't think about that. You just flat out. You couldn't do it if you didn't have that mindset.
Yeah. And do you remember a point where you sort of built up to go up to being like, no, you forget about it all? Where you sort of forget about it all from very early on in your driving?
Yeah, I had no fear when I started. Luckily I had no fear. Then I had a massive crash 7 years ago, the last crash I had before this one. And that actually scared me because my helmet came off.
Oh, shit.
And I was very lucky not to break my neck.
Yeah.
I got badly. I think the main thing was the concussion was so bad. It actually quite scared me. Just having like an impact on my head again.
Yeah.
So I didn't crash for 7 years, which was like a record until this
that's
time.
pretty good going.
But I think this one has actually got rid of that fear because it was such a big crash and it didn't faze me at all. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise.
Until the next time you sail off a ravine.
Won't happen again now.
What in all these situations, you've got, whatever, corners coming up, and are you driving? You're driving to the pace notes, so you know that like, this is just, it's going to be what it's going to be. I'm fully committed. And then presumably each corner you're adapting that picture a little bit as soon as you can see a bit more.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You're fully committed to what the co-driver says. You've got to be. So recceing and making the pace notes. We only get 2 runs for each stage in a road car. Doing 30 miles per hour. When I describe the road to my co-driver for him to write it down.
Yeah.
In shorthand. So from 2 passes alone, it's impossible to remember the corners. Yeah. But I've got to trust that the notes I made during the recce are bang on. Sometimes I've done a rally and thought, God, I'm going way faster in the rally car now than what I anticipated.
Yeah.
So sometimes you've got to rein it in maybe a couple of percent. Because on tarmac especially, it's just so fast. It's quite hard to predict.
Yeah.
But that it's just all experience and seat time, and but luckily I've got a good amount of experience now. But I'm just not. I've not been getting the seat time, and that's my next goal is to try and raise a bit more funding so I can actually practice, because I've been going up doing these world rallies in these extreme locations with only 1 day of practice
Yeah.
against the best drivers in the world, and still been able to compete with them. But to win a championship, you've got to have a bit more than that one
Yeah.
day of practice.
What's available to you in terms of practice? Because it's not like you can just run the course.
Yeah, it's expensive to rent a car. It just all comes down to funding. There's no substitute, and I don't. Simulators for racing might be very helpful because you can learn the track and the cars are
Yeah.
dialed in for that. But in rallying, there's not really anything that's come close yet.
Yeah. Do some of the games, what did I play recently? WRC8 or Rally something or other,
Yeah,
whatever. Presumably some of them have, for particularly, I don't know, famous ones, most of the stages.
I think most of them are made up.
Okay.
That would be a hell of an advantage to have a full stage on a game. I'd be on it all day
Yeah.
if they did that. But I think they're just so long and hard to replicate that most of them are made up.
Yeah. And when you're doing the recce, do some people, if they live in the region, go other time of year, go check it out? Or do you not know what the stages are going to be sometimes?
Yeah, I think that's a controversial topic. I think a lot of guys do,
Yeah.
go a few months earlier or whatever. There's just, yeah, it's hard. It's just hard to say, and I don't think they do anything about it to try and stop people from doing that either, really. But obviously, the locals will do it all the time.
Yeah. Just on the way to the office or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
They're like, oh, I'll just do this
And the
stage.
public roads, so there's nothing they can really do.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. And when you're doing your two recce's, are you allowed to stop and get out and stuff like that?
Yeah. You've got 2 days to do 2 passes
Okay.
of every stage, so you can pretty much do what you want. If you need to check out the inside of a corner for a cut or something like that, you can get out and have a look.
Yeah. I've seen it on some of the tarmac rallies where you've got these gutters down the side of the road.
Yeah,
It looks like people whack some inside tyres in there and then use that.
yeah,
Is that
yeah.
like a common sort of technique? You just,
Yeah, any cut that you can get away with that's not too much, not too risky to damage the tire, get a puncture, you go in for it.
and do those things like that, do they actually sort of like hook you round a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, there's a rally in Belgium called the Ypres Rally, and you even though it's a tarmac rally, you're in the fields half the time, trying to find cuts, trying to make the corner shorter and find an advantage.
And in a rally car, is the sort of racing line there what would possibly could be considered a racing line if it was more of a tarmac, or how does that change? I guess, is it different on different surfaces?
It's fairly similar to racing, but obviously the roads are so narrow. There's a few rounds in the calendar where they'll use more open roads like Spain or some stages in Monte Carlo, but generally the roads are quite narrow, and it's not.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, there's only one line. Everyone's on
Yeah.
the same line, and luckily the best, the world champion starts first, and he makes the best line anyway. So,
Yeah.
that's you don't have to think about that as much as circuit racing. It's a bit more natural.
Yeah. Is there any translation into the sort of sim world for practice, or is it not that great?
Just driving technique, braking properly once, bleeding off the brakes, turning in and on the throttle once. So practicing technique works really well on the sims.
Yeah.
That's the main thing for me. The circuit drivers can obviously learn the braking points, and
Yeah.
I don't know if the car really handles the same because you can't feel it and you can't feel the car rotate and the
Yeah.
weight transfer. But I'm sure that with the technology, it's starting to become amazingly realistic.
Yeah. I noticed, I can't remember what I was playing. It was some sort of rallycross game recently. And I like tried a few different cars, and you could really feel the difference between the ultra modern rallycross car and the older stuff. And the main thing I felt like you could feel was the diff.
Right? Yeah.
Like you could, if you put more lock on, it turned more. Like,
Yeah.
whereas like the older stuff, like you're in for what you're in for. Um, is that something that's changed a lot in the different sort of classes of car? They have different levels of tech and stuff. Does that allow more different styles of driving?
Yeah. I mean, I've not had the chance to drive a WRC1 car
Yeah.
and the new hybrid car. So it's hard to say, but they've got hybrid boost and so much new technology. Surely it changes your driving style a little bit. But for my car, for Rally 2, setup is critical, and to get your setup to suit your driving style is such an art, and
Yeah.
something you can't just get in the car and go and win a round in WRC2. You've got to have the perfect setup to go with all your preparation.
Yeah. And I imagine, unlike on a circuit, like I get to a circuit and I'm like, well, it's tarmac. It's going in a circle, and it might rain a bit or whatever.
Yeah.
My base setup's going to be pretty damn close. Whereas the surface changes and stuff that you're dealing with is on a whole other level.
Yeah. Even from tarmac rally to tarmac rally, there's such massive differences. Tarmac rallying and gravel rallying are like two different sports in
Really?
terms of driving technique. On gravel, you're flowing. It's like a dance. You're flowing from one corner to the next. Tarmac is brutal. How aggressive it is, how much grip you've got. It's like Formula One for the lanes. But gravel it feels, even though it's not, it feels more slow, and you've got a bit more time to react and place the car. A lot more weight transfer. Whereas on tarmac, it's such fine margins.
Yeah.
But it just all, for me, the variety it's just the best sport in the world.
I mean, it's pretty mega. Like I went to my first WRC event this year, which was Spain.
Yeah.
So not too much sideways action, but still pretty flat out. And yeah, have since sort of like looked a bit more into it and watched some stuff. And I was watching some of the videos. I think it was in your YouTube channel, or it's definitely associated. And I saw Rally Portugal.
Right.
Looks like freaking crazy off-road whoops and stuff. Like,
Yeah. I mean, you just can't compare it, can you? Spain's probably the most straightforward rally, and the rally that's most like circuit racing. But then you go on gravel, and the cars take so much abuse. You're jumping twice the height of the car, landing, and it's still intact. What they can take is unbelievable, and even what we can take. In Sardinia last year, it was 65 degrees inside the car at the end of the stages.
oh,
And we're trying to compute at that level, nail every single corner, perfect driving technique, carrying the perfect amount of speed, perfect braking point, listening to all those notes for half an hour in that heat. It's just so underrated and doesn't get the publicity it deserves, really, at the moment.
well, that's an interesting point, because like it's super cool to watch, but it's not really on TV that much. It's not easy to watch anyway.
Yeah.
And do you think we'll see like things like Drive to Survive for Formula One? I think has been amazing for Formula One. I watch Formula One, but I don't find it that interesting. Drive to Survive,
Yeah.
a lot more people, whatever. It's brought a whole bunch more people into the sport. Do you think we might see something like that with rallying?
Oh, that'd be incredible. Like for me, I like Formula One. I just think rallying's so much better. But the Netflix show does make it even better than it is.
Yeah.
Whereas rallying, I feel like it's the opposite.
Yeah.
So something like that would be massive, and just to really explain the sport and to cover the stories.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more than goes on during a rally than just Ogier winning.
Yeah.
The top 10 WRC1 cars. There's so much more going on. You know, down to your young 18-year-old lad doing his debut in a Fiesta, and do you know what I mean? There's so, even Tuthill Porsches were competing a couple of years ago on Monte Carlo.
Oh yeah, was it RGT?
Yeah, exactly. So there's so much more than just what they focus on. The battle with the manufacturers.
Yeah, and it's one of the few things where you can see everyone's competing on the same stretch of tarmac on the same weekend, or at least, you know, the bunch of different classes. Whereas in racing, yeah, you might be able to you can go to a track, but you don't get to see someone direct comparison and at least like have a go at what they're doing as much as in rallying. Yeah,
Totally. And the Formula One it's about the glamour, isn't it? Because it's so big and it's so, there's famous people and so much money involved. That's part of the attraction.
It is, yeah. It's the circus around it and whatnot.
But the rallying, it's the adventure. It's the places we go, the cultures you can experience, the local heroes from each rally that you've got to beat. You've got guys like me who I was living in a caravan earlier this year, putting all my money into doing WRC2, competing against Mickelson, who lives in Monaco, multi-millionaire, flies around in his helicopter. There's so many stories, and
yeah,
it's epic.
What's an example of sort of costs for a season? And I know, and like, how does it work with a driver? I guess you get different deals depending on sort of who you are, but at the same time, like, what's a WRC2 season cost for a team or something?
It's like £500,000 for one car. Luckily, my team manager really believes in me and subsidises me heavily.
Yeah.
But you've got guys. There's a few Russian guys that they're probably spending over $1 million a year on WRC2 because they want to practice every weekend as well.
Okay.
And then for WRC1, if you had the money and you wanted to go straight there, probably $3 million a year.
Right.
But that's never going to be an option for me. I've got to win WRC2 and prove that I deserve a seat and that I'm capable of becoming world champion.
Yeah. What are things that you're working on towards that goal? What are like things you think you can do, or obviously win everything? But...
Yeah. Well, so I've not been in a rally car for 3 months.
Yeah.
I won't be in one for another 6 weeks until we start preparing for Monte Carlo. So my fitness is the biggest thing that keeps me focused and on track.
Yeah.
Preparing for the rally with video, going through my old pace notes. Most of my time is just trying to raise funding and trying to get people on board with my journey and try and get brand partners on board to benefit from the publicity from WRC.
Do any of the drivers do sort of vlogs?
A few guys do, yeah. I think it would be very good for me to do. But I was always quite self-conscious about doing them in the past
Yeah, yeah.
because I was not going home to Monaco. I was going home and living on a friend's sofa. Or, the last few years have been really tough, but
Yeah.
it's starting to pay off.
Oh, I think people are like you're saying about, what makes rallying interesting is the stories.
Yeah.
So, it's okay. Some people might watch to see someone get on a jet, but like, it's not actually that. At the end of the day, a jet's a jet. Like you see one, lots of people are going on them on social media. It's actually the stories. And I think like, okay, it's not Drive to Survive or whatever, but I think people would be interested to see a bit more of your
The reality,
day-to-day or a weekend. And I don't know, does WRC have pretty like television rights for things you can and can't do? Because Formula One were really bad for that. For ages, they wouldn't let their drivers post anything, which was a stupid idea.
I can do what I want. The only thing I can't do is publish action from the rally. That's from their coverage, I think.
Okay.
So it's pretty accessible.
Can you have your own camera in the car?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yeah.
So you can publish that. So you can get some. I saw this clip. Now, this is not you, but someone just texted. We were in a group chat this week of. He was like, "Check this out," and it was some rallying. So I thought, let's have a little look. And it is this. I don't know whether this will play very well. So we'll try. We'll try. I'll try and share it.
Yeah, this sideways jump.
Yeah. It's like a full-on mental sideways jump in a Evo, I think.
Yeah, it just sends it.
Is this a normal sort of thing that people do?
That'll happen about a dozen times during a rally easily. Something like that.
Really? Yeah. So for the people that are listening,
you need to see my drift into the tunnel. Bear in mind, I've only seen this corner once a week before in the road car.
But seriously, this sort of thing happens a lot.
Yeah, like that was just in the car. That felt like nothing.
Yeah,
but it was only until I got sent that clip I was like, that was absolutely epic. But yeah, it's amazing when you get sent clips like that because I forgot about that corner.
Yeah. What do you think of all of the like Gymkhana stuff?
I was just going to say that was the first go at that corner.
Yeah.
But it'd take Ken Block about 12 goes to do that. Because you can see all of his skid marks. And if you've seen his documentaries, he's always hitting curbs and stuff. So I'm not convinced, to be honest.
He's well,
he's a great showman.
I think he's done incredibly well.
Yeah,
Did you watch the electric one?
Yeah.
The recent one?
Yeah.
I thought, what did you think of that one?
The car's incredible. What they're doing to these cars is just unbelievable now. And that just blows my mind.
Yeah, actually, imagine for you, actually, some of because the bit that interested me on that, it was the first video that I watched that I sort of stopped.
Yeah.
I got about 2/3 way through and was like, I'm done with this. Whereas all the other ones, I think possibly because we're on version 12 or whatever, you've kind of seen it.
Yeah.
But there was a few things that were car specific that car could do that you're like, I'm not sure other cars could do. Like some of the rotation stuff and then just the full, like the reverse entry just fully smoking the tires.
A lot of power in that clip, yeah.
But yeah, I thought it would be a slightly interesting one to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, he's just done so well out of his brand.
So well.
That's the key, isn't it? You've got to stand out and get yourself out there. And I'm constantly trying to think of things I can do to raise my profile and stand out from the other guys in WRC. And maybe become more than a rally driver. Yeah.
I think doing some sort of videos is a good idea. And it doesn't have to be, crazy. You just start out doing a bit of the real chatting, whatever, showing some stuff. I think it would go a long way, because I think Ken Block is an incredible example of someone who loves rallying. He wanted to do rallying, realised that he didn't financially, it wasn't going to work out for him or whatever, started a company, built that company up, and now has come back and is doing rallying sponsored by like everyone and whatever. So like
he can do whatever he wants now.
Yeah, exactly. In whatever cars he wants, builds the most mental stuff. He's done well.
Definitely.
So with WRC now, so how many classes are there?
There's WRC 1, 2 and 3.
Okay.
Within WRC 2 is the main class, because there's 50 competitors usually on each event.
Bloody hell. That's a lot.
It's incredible, yeah. And within that, there's juniors under 30, which I'm also in, and masters over 50, which is quite cool. Most of the guys are in the 30s.
Yeah.
So it's it's unbelievably competitive, and a lot of the guys are factory drivers. A lot of them have already been in WRC 1, but there's just so few seats at the moment in Rally 1.
Okay.
That's the big challenge at the moment.
Yeah, because I guess you've got this large amount of people, and
there's literally only 10, Sam. There's 10 seats in Rally 1, and
what is it, 3 teams?
6 of them have earned it, and the other guys have paid the way.
Yeah.
So there's there's 6 chances.
And you look at the names of some of the people that that are like coming back for a bit, and you're like, yeah, fair. I can see why they'll get a seat.
Yeah. It's savage, but I still believe that if I can win WRC 2, I'm still only 28, that I'll get a chance.
Yeah, definitely. With the brands and the cars, lots of these cars are sort of starting to disappear now. So whether it's like the Fiesta doesn't exist anymore, and we've got the Puma as a replacement, but as a road car, that doesn't necessarily translate into what a rally car would be. But presumably the Puma is actually quite similar to what the Fiesta was like as a rally car.
It seems massive to me. It seems like at one point all the rally cars were getting smaller, but now it's like they're getting bigger again. So yeah, it's weird how it changes, and we just need more manufacturers back involved. And I don't know if that's moving to hybrid and electric will help that, or where it's going to go. Because I've heard recently that there's even going to be U-turns on that. And
it's an interesting one, because I think, well, definitely with hybrid, like, I don't know, how do you feel about hybrid cars generally?
I'm a fan.
Yeah, I think I've driven a few, and certain ones I think are great, work quite well, whether it's like your Prius, Civic, whatever, that sort of type of stuff. But they are quite complicated, and I imagine as the race cars, they're bloody complicated as well. And EVs, for a road car point of view, not necessarily entertainment, are quite good at what they do. This sort of middle ground feels really complicated.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It works well in rallying, because when they're in the city, the Rally 1 guys are in full electric mode, and that's pretty amazing. Yeah. They're not causing a scene. If there's some little old lady that doesn't like the rally and going past the house, then they're not bothering her. But then on the stages, the fire-breathing monsters, and even faster with the hybrid electric boost.
Yeah.
So it's the power is just unbelievable that the electric motors are giving the cars. It's
just massive torque from low down. Is that a thing in the community where people complain around rally weekends that the rally cars are too loud?
Most people absolutely love it and welcome the rally with open arms. But there's always going to be the odd person who doesn't like it. But especially in Europe, they absolutely love it everywhere I've been.
Yeah. I didn't realise that you go to a rally weekend and you're driving around and you see rally cars just driving down the road going
Yeah.
You don't see that anywhere else.
No, and like you say, even on the road sections, you've got people lining the road to check out the cars. So it's so unique.
Are they quite good at? Has the crowd? I'm presuming the crowd control is significantly better than the insane footage from whenever 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah. Luckily it is. Yeah, there's an instance every now and again that someone stood in a dangerous place, but most of the time it's so much safer. I say it's a safe sport now. I feel safe in the car. As long as you behave and listen to the marshals, you'll be safe spectating.
Yeah. Yeah. It does seem mad that you're allowed to get as close as you're allowed to get to the cars. And then you see the odd, when I was there, like you see someone appearing where they shouldn't appear and then they get whistled at. Everyone's like, way! And then a car goes past them at like 100 and they're like, oh, okay.
How did you find that, Sam?
It was
the first stage you went to watch.
Oh, so the first, I was completely spoiled. So I went with Toyota. And so we like helied into the stage. I was like, well, this is pretty sick.
Yeah.
And then we got out, and then the first stage, I was actually recording a podcast with a guy called Chris Rawls.
Yeah, I've listened to that one.
Yeah, and he's talking me through the stuff, and he's like, right, okay, this car comes along, and then it's whatever it is. This is like the countdown of cars kind of thing. And then this, and then, someone comes past, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then someone crashed.
Oh, right.
Like 10 minutes later, I was like, oh, well, what happens now? We're in the middle of nowhere, and that's it. Like, yeah, basically that's it.
Who was it that crashed? Was it a Rally One or?
It was a Rally One car, and it was one of the Fords. I don't know who it was.
Right. Okay.
Green Smith.
Oh yeah.
Maybe.
Right.
I think that was. And then it was this sort of dilemma of, because I was on a sort of press thing, and I think it's the way they do it for also if they've got execs or coming in. You watch like some rallying, but then you heli out and you go and have lunch, and then you watch a bit of rallying, and then you heli out and then have dinner and a coffee or whatever, and then you sort of come back in. But I was really keen, and it didn't work, to get out there, at night, in the morning, sunrise, bit of fog.
You're definitely spoiled.
Because
on Rally GB, it was all about going at 4 a.m. and setting up a bit of a barbecue and getting completely soaked, but the atmosphere and the fog, and there's something special about it.
That's I want to go and watch some more rallies, and I want to get like in it.
Yeah.
I would, if someone wants to take me in a heli, absolutely, that is a sick way of getting around.
Yeah, same.
But I also want to get out there at night and in the morning mainly for photos and experiencing it, of like that time of day, like just before the sun comes up, and then the sun coming up is like, and motorsport, whether it's on a track, Le Mans, somewhere, anywhere, is such a mega time of day. It's so still. And then you get the...
Totally agree. Past. I think the best you'll ever get is Col de Torini, the first stage of Rally Monte Carlo.
Okay.
In the dark. And everyone's got the fires going, and the snow up on the top of the stage, sheet ice on slick tyres. What's
that like? Driving such different surfaces.
Monte Carlo is the best rally in the world, because when else do you get to drive a full, tarmac car with slicks, but you've got a couple of kilometers of ice in the middle of the stage. It's still faster to do the stage on slicks, but you've got to just crawl through that section. That for me is just epic. What a challenge.
Yeah. And how do you have studs?
Well, you can, but then you would lose on the dry tarmac. So it's always a gamble on what to take. Do you want to be safe or do you want to be fast? But with a lot of risk. So it's that is just the tactics involved, and it's a daunting moment when you have to choose your tyres, knowing that there's a section of ice in one of the next stages. But it's
And how do you deal?
Epic. There's no motorsport challenge like that for me.
Yeah. Like, how do you deal with that scenario? Because you're on your slicks and then there's snow and ice. Like, you don't have the grip. So how does that work?
You've literally, you've got to drive perfectly on the dry and then just be so patient on the ice, but not lose too much time. Just find the sweet spot, which is so difficult in those conditions.
Yeah. And I guess at that point, I've done a little bit of ice driving, but not on slicks. It must feel so slow, but then when you've done it, if you go too fast, you're still going really slowly, but you're like, yeah, this is still too fast.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just seeing your sim in the background.
Oh yeah. It's not the best podcast setup right
set up for rallying,
but it's quite a good setup. It needs I've got a handbrake that I'm trying to I need to machine some way to connect it correctly, but I was playing a bit of a rally again the other day, and just with a wheel, handbrake just doesn't work. I feel like I'm sure there's some driving that could be improved, but it did feel like trying to press a button for a handbrake and then also turn. It was it's not
ideal. You need to go on Dirt Rally 2 and have a go on Monte Carlo.
I will.
With slicks.
Well, I'll have a go. How do you train for rallying?
I don't really.
Okay, but from a fitness point of view, do you do any stuff specific for cars or not really?
I do a bit of everything. There's nothing specific. I do a lot of back training and core, so I'm strong, and on the gravel, more physical rallies, I don't get a stiff back or neck or shoulders. But mostly I just I do a bit of everything, and I'm probably I'd say I'm the right size. Some of the lads are so skinny, but I can't see how that's going to help you. When you're going on these 4-day rallies, you need some strength in your muscles. Yeah,
I guess otherwise you're getting bounced around. In the seats, do you have a fully molded insert? Or for your seat?
Yeah.
We just kind of sit.
Yeah. But it's still, there's a lot of bouncing around.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine that. It's bad enough in a race car on a track. And I'm like, how can you tighten me down just a little bit more and a bit more and a bit more? Whereas I'm not going like shaking.
Like the Mercedes earlier this season, bouncing on the straight.
Yeah, that is because when we've had the situations like that in F1, or recently we've had some horrific stuff with sausage curbs.
Yeah,
where people in Formula cars have, because they're basically bolted to the floor with no suspension, and they go over these sausage curbs, take off, and then it's like jumping out into a seated position from head height or whatever.
Yeah.
Like just horrific for your spine. I guess in a rally car, you do have quite plush suspension, but then you are sending it on quite another a level.
Yeah, you're right there. We've got a bit. There's a bit of padding in the seats and stuff like that, but I think it's the length of the events.
Yeah.
Being in the upright position, steering for 3 or 4 days. These guys, say if they're doing an hour's racing, they can get a bit of physio afterwards, and
Yeah.
it's quite a lot more of a relaxed race weekend, I'd say.
Yeah.
But obviously, apart from 24-hour races, but
Yeah.
the rally weekends are brutal. It's just non-stop, relentless. Short sleep in the car pretty much all day, apart from an hour at service in for lunch.
And presumably as well, like with what was I doing recently? Someone invited me to go drive some R-Baths, and we were just doing like handbrake into a parking space and all that sort of, just ripping a handbrake
was
a
that
lot.
at Tesco's?
Yeah. Basically, it was in a Brands Hatch car park, but that I learned quite quickly that you only needed quite small inputs. You could do huge inputs, but actually it was small inputs, and then use your handbrake and weight of the car and whatever. Presumably, driving style dictates then how much that takes out of you over hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, exactly, Sam. Yeah, I always try to aim to have the smallest inputs as possible. It's also much smoother, but sometimes it's just not possible. If in like the soft gravel rallies where you've really got to manhandle the car through, and being smooth just isn't fast enough.
Right.
Depends, yeah.
And driving some of the Portugal stuff I saw, just like seriously deep ruts and cars bouncing around and all over the place. How do you manage that from a driving point of view? Like, are the cars, can you just sort of point it in a direction and it gets there, or is there a lot of fighting in the middle?
Sometimes there is fighting, like you said, in deep ruts. Yeah, it really does depend, but like Portugal, Sardinia, they're so rough. If you're not careful, you could get spat out of a rut or, off the road so easily.
Yeah.
It can be quite physical. You've got to be the boss of the car and not let it drive you.
Yeah. Did you hurt your hand recently? Was that driving?
So it's a funny story, actually. So it was in my massive crash in Greece. We rolled 7 times off a cliff. It was actually getting out the car. I thought my co-driver, I helped him get out, and I thought he was stood on the roof holding the door open, but he wasn't. So as I went to get up, the door slammed and my hand bent back the wrong way in between the door and the cage. So I was really lucky not to break my wrist.
Yeah.
Just really badly sprained all the ligaments in my hand. So I injured getting out. And not during 7 rolls.
Doors, yeah. Doors of cars can be exceptionally dangerous. I was very lucky to drive a 300 SL Gullwing recently.
Yeah.
But they're quite old. This one was quite old. Hadn't driven very much. And the sort of springs on the doors were pretty crap. And I had the door open, and I was talking to someone. And my hand was like, I don't know, let's say the door shuts like here. My hand was just chilling like that. And the door just dropped.
Right. And
I moved my hand like just backwards a little bit, and it slammed from like full drop to full shut. And you're like, it was so close to just being like game over, no fingers, no nothing. Like,
and we were on the side as well, so
yeah.
So it was full weight of, but
It's funny that that's the thing that got you.
Yeah. Just the final nail in the coffin at the time.
Do people ever have things like fly around the cabin? Like you
That
probably
can
don't
be
have
quite dangerous,
bits of radios
actually.
and stuff. Yeah.
Because if a roll like that, if the spare tire was loose, for example, that could
Yeah.
kill you. So
Yeah.
everything in the car's got to be properly secured. The worst thing about that crash actually was because the door was smashed in, we couldn't get out, and it's
Right.
set on fire.
Shit.
So we were trying to ram the door open with our heads and all sorts.
Oh.
Luckily, we managed to smash the door back open after a couple of minutes, and then I hurt my hand. Then we put the fire out, and it was just all mental few minutes.
I mean, you didn't mention that it was on fire.
Yeah.
The first
Forgot
time.
that
I mean, that's
note, didn't I?
that little nugget there. Do you get given
Extinguishers,
like a little window breaking thing and stuff like that?
Yeah, we've got. I didn't actually think about that at the time, stupidly. But we've got one of them down the side of up the seat, and we've got 2 extinguishers.
Right.
So one that's plugged into the car, which would go in the engine bay around the seats, and one handheld one which you can take out and use.
Yeah.
So luckily we put the fire out. Otherwise, it would have. I think in another couple of minutes, it would have taken the whole car and probably set fire to the whole forest in a very hot Greek climate.
Yeah, that's not what you want.
So we did well to put it out, really.
Yeah. Have you come across those things called fire safety sticks? This is a bit of a lame conversation, but they're quite interesting.
I think I've seen a video of them throwing them in barbecues or something. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, probably. It's like a little tube that you sort of strike the end and a gas comes out.
Right.
And you basically just point it at a fire and it puts the fire out.
Oh, bloody hell.
But they I guess you've got regulations of what you can use and what you can't use, but they're like insane at putting out fires, and they're really good at putting out fires in cars, because I presume you might find if you try and spray something, it just you don't actually have that long of spray, and then also it just hits whatever you're spraying it at or possibly goes through. These things you can they last for I think the biggest one's 100 seconds, and you just point it at the thing, or if it's an engine you can put it on top of the engine because it's gas, it goes down and then just puts the fire out. They're pretty legit.
I'll have to look into them.
They're seriously good.
Yeah.
And they're not heavy. But I think the guys. I did an interview with the UK distributor, and I think they were involved in some rally,
right?
Yeah, did some motorsport rush. When you're driving along, and it seems to happen a lot, you get a puncture or something. How do you keep driving, and how does that affect the car?
So when I won the European Rally Championship on the last stage, I just had to finish the stage to win the championship, and I picked up a puncture in the middle. So it was about 30 k's, and 15 k's in, I got the puncture, front right, and I knew that if I stopped to change it, I would definitely lose the championship, because it takes me a minute 30 to change a tyre, get back in, get strapped back in.
That is quick.
Yeah. That is quick. But I knew that was too much time. So I gambled and drove on front right puncture for the last 15 Ks. The tyre completely delaminated and came off. So I was just on the rim. Yeah. For the last 10, 8, 9 Ks, I was literally just on the rim. Luckily, they're strong, the rally rims, so I carried on. And in the end, I lost about a minute. So it was the best decision to carry on. Yeah. So you've got to just work that out in the moment. Is it better to stop or carry on?
And if you're on a rim, are you doing like 30 miles an hour or something?
No, you're still going as fast as you can, but you just know that your braking distance is and your corner speed's got to be. You sort of work it out as you're going along.
Yeah.
Um,
You're like, well, I can turn left or I turn right, but turning left is going to be more interesting.
yeah. So say if there's like 100 meters straight, you've got to brake 30 meters before the corner with all four tires.
Yeah.
You've got to. In that moment, I was just working out. I need to brake about 45 meters before the corner. So yeah, it's weird. It's quite a skill, but that actually happens a lot in rallying.
Yeah. And I imagine actually it's the nature of this sort of beast of you're constantly adapting to different conditions, different scenarios. So actually something like that, yes, it messes with the car, but there's literally what you're doing all day, every day is
Adapting,
dealing with stuff.
Totally agree. That's the strength of a rally driver. Where the circuit guys are extremely precise, but they pretty much know it's going to be the same every time.
Yeah.
They need to brake in the same place. It's very routine, isn't it? Whereas rallying's constant. It's how fast you can adapt is the fastest and the best driver.
Yeah. And that, like you were saying earlier about, working on technique, maybe on a sim or something, like one brake, one turn, one accelerate, that sort of stuff. That sounds like a relatively simple thing on a circuit. It's not that simple on a circuit, but like you can learn a circuit and go, I brake at this exact point, this hard, turn in on the gas, whatever. Whereas like in a rally car, you can't do that at all because you can't learn it. And you don't really know where you got to brake. So is it all feeling of like, well, I know I need to slow down to roughly this speed for this corner, so I'm going to work that out somehow before the corner?
Yeah, God, it's such a tough question because it is feeling, but also it's so you've got to find your way, and so that corner might have been all right. I was maybe 1% too fast around there, a little bit scrubbing the tyres a bit too much, maybe on the edge a bit too much. I'll come back at 1% for the next corner. Maybe that one was 1% not fast enough, and it's just finding that sweet spot. And obviously the pace notes help you with that.
Yeah.
And it just comes together, but it's not easy.
It's when you see, I just find it amazing. I can't remember what it was. What was it? Pikes Peak and
Ari Vatanen or Loeb or...
It was Loeb or someone, but maybe in the Peugeot. I can't remember. Did they take that electric Peugeot up there?
I'm not sure. I
don't know whether they did. I feel like he did something
with Peugeot. It wasn't electric, but Peugeot and Loeb did something, yeah.
And I think, and this is like a classic sort of rallying situation story, I guess. I think it was like, I did a recce at 30 miles an hour in my truck, and then I drove it up once, and then I drove it up flat out, and that's as fast as I can go. Can't go any faster than that. And they're like, yeah, that was really fast.
Just the second time.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, okay, maybe it was a little bit more than that, or whatever. But basically, a large section of road, pretty much one go at it.
Yeah.
And you're like, there was a little bit more here, but probably a little bit less there. And it's going to be about that. Like, you're not going to go much faster than that. That is an insane sort of
true
skill to do, and it is rallying. I mean, that is what it is, isn't
totally, yeah. Like when we go and do the test before the rally, the 1 day's practice we have, you're on it when after the second or third run, the times aren't getting faster. You're on the same second. That's when I've just done 20 runs and you're on the same second every single time from the second go.
Yeah. And do you look back? Because I know sort of circuit racers, and I'm sure rally drivers, the same thing. You're like, there's no perfect lap, there's no perfect run, because it's basically impossible to do. more so in rallying than on the circuit. Do you look back every time and go, okay, if I was doing that again, do you go through the footage and go, I would go slightly faster, adapt and then I don't know, do you then adapt the notes? Because you're never doing it again. It's not like you get another go.
Yeah. Yeah, we do, yeah, because the stages are repeated.
Oh yeah, you get to do them twice, don't you?
Yeah, so you have your morning loop and then your afternoon, evening loop. Usually it's the same stages, 3 or 4 stages done for the second time.
Yeah.
It's very rare that you think, oh, I wasn't quick enough there.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's could have been a bit
ditch.
smoother there. Or
Okay, yeah.
maybe braking, I could have braked a bit later there, or most of the time it's actually, it could have been a bit smoother.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
been a bit slower on this corner to be faster on the next one.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's for me, it's rarely, oh, I've just been slow through this part at the moment.
You won some awards. What were they called? Was it? That's like the Colin McRae Flat Out Award. Was that it?
Yeah. So that was when the story I told you about when I crashed my Twingo.
Yeah.
I won that award, and that was basically a prize they gave out to like a star performance on each rally.
Yeah.
So regardless of result, it was just for something. Yeah. I love that. They should bring that back.
Yeah, it sounds quite fun. So yeah, actually, your point about being okay, that could have been a bit smoother and a bit slower in, a bit like that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, definitely beginner circuit stuff. Everyone's the chat of like, well, if you're not crashing, you're not trying hard enough. And you're like, well, it's just clearly rubbish.
Yeah.
Because you spend too much money on repairs at that point and none testing. And then I've slowly learned that actually you can go a tiny bit faster or a tiny bit slower and you've got some leeway and you're still on the track, but it's like a bit more interesting. And rallying, it's way more visual in that sense, I guess. If you go a bit fast, does it just look more sideways as you're trying to keep it on? Or
sometimes it's so easy to overdrive, which I think very similar to what you were saying. Sometimes it's better to be 1% below and you're able to take everything in and understand what the car's doing rather than slightly overdriving. Because when you're forcing it, you're not turning in properly. You could be scrubbing the tyres slightly. You've got to be confident, but still smooth, relaxed, subtle yet the correct inputs. It's such a fine line, but it's really easy to overdrive in a rally car.
Well, yeah,
it's
and sideways looks cool.
Away. Yeah.
Are there some drivers? Presumably, there's some drivers that are more leery than others, and can it be quicker for a bit, but then over the course of a rally, it doesn't necessarily stack up? Or actually, if you get it bang on, you don't look that ragged, and you just rapid everywhere.
Yeah. You can tell if they're on the ragged edge, that you just can't sustain it.
Yeah.
And you're overheating your tyres, brakes. But then equally, if you're not committing enough, you can easily lose the rally in one stage.
Yeah.
Which I didn't drive for 2 years during COVID. When I got back in the car, it was such a shock to the system. I had to be really patient with myself to get back up to speed.
Yeah.
But I could easily do one stage really well on the pace, and then suddenly the next stage I just wasn't on it. Luckily, I've got past that, and now every stage I'm fighting within seconds for the stage win.
Was that, how do you sort of prepare yourself? Presumably, you've got to be in the right zone for every stage. Like, you completely stuff one stage. It seems like rallying, they're generally pretty close. We're talking seconds over huge distances.
Yeah.
And if you're way off, that's it, game over. So how do you sort of keep yourself, and has that been an interesting journey of like, to perform at that level every single rally over a weekend and then a season?
It's just the experience, the confidence, the right prep. It's come together for me. But when I was younger, I had like my favourite stage, and I'd just destroy everyone on a single stage.
Yeah.
And then my team would say to me, "Why don't you just do that every stage?" But then there were some stages which I didn't like, and I just was a bit average on them, with mid-table. And then I had my favourite ones where I was always unbelievable. So for me, it's always been in my head a bit, and now I've just got to do it every single time.
Do you have like a little pre-stage routine?
As long as I know that I'm alert, and sometimes because the road sections are so long, you can get a bit tired. And
Okay, yeah.
I usually warm up, do a physical warm up, 5-10 minutes before, get the muscles all, the blood flowing. And then when I'm in the car, I'll just sort of almost try and take a step back, try and relax into my seat and just focus on the first few kilometres, what's coming.
Yeah.
And I find for me, actually taking a step back and being relaxed rather than attacking it, that works so much better for me and just helps me focus.
Yeah, because you're not winning it in the first couple of corners, but you definitely can lose it.
When I was younger, I thought I've got to attack, but it's so unsustainable with that mindset. You've got to be like fully relaxed, and you feel everything more.
Right, yeah.
You feel what the car's doing. You're one step ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, and I imagine you need to have like your level of driving and then your sort of conscious ability to do other stuff. You need to have so much space over the top of the driving to deal with all of the things that are going on. And I guess if you get agitated and really like in it, it's probably quite easy to get behind the car almost.
Exactly. You can get overwhelmed with everything and just start fighting it, and you don't feel connected to the car.
Yeah. And can you drive those cars, like modern cars, you've got power steering, presumably you're super delicate, trying to be anyway, the car, whereas back then, were people driving like that? Or is it, it's just a bit more physical and you kind of have to muscle it around a bit more?
I don't know how it'd be possible because they're just so physical. I don't know how it'd be possible to drive like today. Big slick tyres on grippy tarmac in Corsica. So much, it'd be so difficult. But it'd be interesting to compare, if there was still any identical stages, but I'd find it hard to believe if they were anywhere near the modern cars. Even modern Rally 3 cars.
Yeah. Because I think that's as someone who's like not massively been involved in rally or around it, I hear about all these fire breathing old cars, and then you look at the new cars, and you're like, well, yeah, but they are carrying some pace down these roads. Like, it doesn't necessarily look quite as dramatic, but it is fast.
Yeah, it's just so
with all
fast.
The aero and everything.
Exactly. It's they're like Formula 1 cars, the Rally 1 cars. Formula 1 cars for the forests. They're just so fast and so efficient. And going sideways isn't the way anymore.
No. It's a shame. Do you think we'll ever see, some, I'd say sort of sports car manufacturers like Porsche or someone come back into rallying? I know we've had a whole bunch of sort of rally-esque cars come out in the last couple of weeks, whether it's Lamborghini or Porsche, but it would be super cool to see some rear-wheel drive stuff again. But it kind of, are there classes for that? Because obviously you couldn't do that in WRC.
I think the RGT class would have been awesome. Tuttill's Porsche, I think that had some really good results. But they recently built that, is it the Singer? Was it a four-wheel drive monster? It literally was like a WRC Porsche.
Yeah.
And that is the coolest thing
ACS.
I've ever seen.
Have you seen it in person?
No, I've not.
Oh, it's normally at Tuttle.
Yeah.
So if you go and pop your head in. That car is normally there, and it is sick. It's so cool.
That is the coolest thing ever. I'd be desperate to let Richard Tuttle give us a go in that.
Yeah. That would be so sick. Well, actually, I normally wrap these up with 5 questions. You ready?
I'm ready.
Do you have a most memorable driving trip or journey?
Ooh.
And maybe also tag on most memorable rally stage as well.
God, that's so difficult. There's been so many. Me and my dad, when I was 18, we had a motorhome. We drove down to Morzine for Rally Mont Blanc, towed the rally car down, and then I competed there. And it was in the summer in 2000, and I was like several years ago, and it was just it was an amazing trip. And the rally was just stunning on the most incredible French closed roads with the best scenery.
Yeah, that actually, I've not even thought about that. But like for each rally, that's an awesome road trip to the rally if you're going to drive there.
Yeah.
Because they're all in cool places.
The whole thing was insane. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super, super cool. If you could only drive one car for the rest of your life, sports car, what would it be?
Not a rally car.
I guess that could possibly be road legal. It's driven on the road.
It's got to be the Yaris WRC, hasn't it? That's just won the World Championship.
Yeah. Are they,
I don't care how noisy I'd be.
How are the in the top class at the moment? So we've got the Puma, the Yaris,
Hyundai,
and what's the other one? Hyundai. Are they all pretty even in terms of pace? I know the Toyotas have been doing better, but
yeah, they're very even. I think the Yaris is. I think the drivers are slightly in form more than the other guys. But yeah, very, very close, the cars. Loeb won Monte Carlo in the Fiesta, so you can't say the Fiesta's not got the pace.
Yeah. Just if you're one of the other drivers, he comes in and it's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Yep, that's how you drive it fast, lads. No changes.
No comment. I might get in trouble.
It's super cool. Super cool seeing that. What do you think is the most undervalued car at the moment? What should be worth more?
I actually thought I drove a Taycan Turbo S, and that was unbelievable. And I didn't think that was too pricey for what it is, really.
They are pretty mental, like as an experienced thing to drive.
Yeah.
I did a back-to-back with the Panamera Turbo SE Hybrid.
Right.
That's a long name. And the Taycan Turbo S. And I got out of the Taycan and was like, well, that's just a better car. Like, ignore the powertrain, whatever. Like, it's just a better car. The Panamera Hybrid is so heavy and kind of, it's got all this weight up high with all the hybrid stuff. And then you get in the Taycan and you're like, well, as a pure experience of what it is, it is really good.
I'd probably go with that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Most interesting car to you at the moment? What are you Googling, looking up?
I've been doing a bit of research about, it's not too exciting, but the Carrera Cup Porsche, because I'm actually going to try and do a few rounds next year.
Oh, nice.
So I've been doing a bit of research, looking at the onboards and stuff like that for
Yeah.
Carrera Cup.
Do you do a lot of track driving?
No, but I had the chance to test one recently,
That's it.
and it went really well, and my pace was really strong from the off. And I've been talking to a team who are really interested to get me in for a couple of rounds.
Yeah.
So it'd be amazing
Nice.
to try and get that sorted.
That would be so cool. And yeah, for them, for everyone involved, it must be quite interesting because they're like, well, we know this guy's quick in a car
Yeah,
on a rally stage, but this circuit malarkey is like,
it's different.
I'm
sport,
sure there's some things that he can learn. But if you're, the pace is good to start with, you're like, hang on, I've not even started having to go at this yet.
Exactly.
What's it like to drive? I've not driven the one of the cup cars. I hear they're quite fun.
Very fun, yeah. A lot easier to drive than I expected. Just as long as you're driving with proper technique, like with the rallying, then it worked really well. And yeah, it was. I'm sure on a grid with 20 or 30 other cars, it'd be amazing.
Yeah. And it's a super competitive series, that.
Definitely.
Like they're always like split by not very much.
Yeah. So I'm not doing any. I'm probably not going to be doing any rallies in the UK next year. So I'm trying to find something to do here for my sponsors and partners. And I think that'd be a great opportunity.
Yeah, that would be cool. That will be cool.
Yeah, you have to come up.
Enjoy that. Well, let me know when you're racing.
Yeah,
and I'll see. 5-car garage, unlimited value.
So I've already chosen my Yaris, haven't I?
Your Yaris WRC.
Carrera GT.
Ooh.
You can tell I'm a bit of a Porsche man, can't you?
Well, I asked someone this in the episode that went up this week, and they did 5 Porsches. So,
oh really? Wasn't Richard
they are
Tuttle,
a garage that sells Porsches, but they're not a Porsche dealership.
Yeah. That is it. The Singer Porsche we discussed as well.
Yeah, so the ACS.
Yeah, so the Yaris, the ACS, the Carrera GT, those new Land Rovers. I've seen them with the kit on. Is it Overfinch or something?
What on a Defender?
Yeah, they look pretty mega. I'd probably have one of them for the dog.
Sort of daily-ish.
Yeah, dog car.
Towing the other cars.
Yeah. One more. Are those smart Brabus smart cars any good?
I've not driven one. They're pretty hilarious, but I've not driven one.
Something like that, like a
Something
really
tiny.
small city car.
Yeah.
I've covered all angles there.
Yeah, you've got your fire-breathing monsters that you can take rallying or even drive down the road because they're road legal. Cool. Yeah, that's a good bunch.
It's a good random bunch.
Yeah, that is. There's more rally cars in there than we've had before.
Yeah.
Not that surprising, but yeah. Okay. Well, thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks so much, Sam. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been great.
Great to meet you and hopefully see you at an event next season.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm at something, do you go to Goodwood and things like that?
Yeah. I want to try and bring my rally car over for Goodwood.
Nice.
That'd be epic. So it's definitely in the pipeline.
Cool. It's actually the one thing I've never managed. I've been to Festival Speed like a lot of times, but I'm always there for one day, and I'm always normally covering something sports car or whatever. And I've never made it up to the rally stage, like ever.
Yeah.
Well,
have
it
to
looks
get
like that's where
in.
it's at. Yeah, 100%. That'll be way more fun than going up in some road car. Okay, cool. Well, thanks very much.
Thanks, Sam. See you soon.